seats here. I'm going to get these guys started. We've got a couple gentlemen from Napoli. Sounds good. All right. I'm not even going to attempt to say that last part of the name. I'll let them pronounce that one for you. I'm going to start off. I'm going to introduce Sam Wade with Napoli, and he's going to take it from there and introduce the second speaker.
I got it. I finally found it. Good morning. Great to be here with you this morning. Thank you for the introduction, Ethan. Always like to do the last session of a conference because two reasons, really. Number one, people that stay through the full conference, certainly the best of the best. And number two, you always remember the last thing you hear. So hopefully you remember from this session, this is free money for your utility at no cost. And all you got to do is register into it. So we're proud to be here representing National Rural Water, Tennessee Association of Utility Districts, part of that, to give you an update on the Rural Water PFAS lawsuit that was filed back in 2018 against the manufacturers of those PFAS chemicals. And that's resulted in a settlement of currently $15.4 billion. That if you have PFAS detections at any level in your water supply, you get money out of this settlement. And I know several of you have already received your first check out of that, and there's more to come, if you will. So I'm going to give you just a little bit of background, then I'm going to introduce Hank Naughton to give you the details on the lawsuit and settlements and so forth. You know, this started back in 2016 when EPA issued a non-enforceable health advisory that lowered that limit from 400 parts per trillion down to 70 parts per trillion. And that got everyone's attention. And frankly, nobody, well, I'm sure some people knew about PFAS, but the majority of water utilities had never heard of PFAS before, me included. So that started, and the National Rural Water Association Board of Directors could see the impending financial impact of PFAS and PFOA on its members and utilities across the nation, and they engaged with the law firm of Napoli Shkolnik to file this lawsuit. So since that time, we've gone through phase one, which is typically systems tested prior to June of 2023, and we're now in phase two. And phase two is systems tested after June of 2023. So that would include everybody that's engaged in the UCMR 5 rule and so forth. So if you have detections, there's money for you. And there's three things I try to tell people. Number one is free money, essentially, because there's no upfront cost. If there's not an award for your utility, zero cost at all. Number two, you gotta register into it to get it, though, and that's a fairly simple process. We'll get into that. And then number three, if hopefully you don't have it, you don't get any money. That's the best. If you don't have any detections, you don't get any money. But if you do have detections and get money, there's no strings attached to that. It's sort of like a property damage settlement. Your property, your water quality was damaged by these companies, then they're giving you money, and you can do with it what you want with it. Raises for everybody is what I always say. So with that, I'm going to introduce Hank Naughton, managing partner, guy that hired me when I retired from National Rural Water after 36 years to support this lawsuit. And he's sort of unique for an attorney. Number one, he grew up around the water industry. His dad actually run a water system in Massachusetts. In fact, the water plant, and I've seen it's named after his dad, so that's something special. He's a former state legislator and recently retired from the National Guard. In fact, back in when I went to work for him, and Hank was on active duty, so we'd have calls and he'd be standing in front of an Abrams tank. So he's sort of a rural water guy, or rural water lawyer, I should say, and many of you have met him. He's been around at these conferences since 2020 or 2021. So Hank, with that, Hank Naughton.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much. That's kind of you. Let me take this. Like the Sundance Kid, I do better when I move. And most of you are old enough to remember that movie, Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. A couple things to start off with. Number one, can everybody in the back hear me? Good. If you can, if my voice starts to fade, wave, because I'm getting over a cold and my voice tends to fade. But two, hopefully I won't be talking that long and I can make my points and get you out of here sooner rather than later and before my voice even starts to fade. Thank you, Sam. Sam and I, besides being colleagues, have become deep personal friends over the last several years. His commitment to the water industry and to rural water is second to none. And I know that because I've traveled across this country to all of the state rural water associations. It was an honor when National Rural Water brought my firm in to represent them in this litigation. And then it's an honor to go around the country and talk to people like yourselves. As Sam said, my dad ran the water department in Clinton, Massachusetts for 40 years. The treatment plant is named after him. He just lived and breathed this industry. And when I come to your events, and this is the fourth or fifth time that I've been to Tennessee Association of Utility Districts, and each time this is the slot they give us. The last people holding you up before you leave for the weekend. So we try to make it interesting. But it's like going home. It's like where I grew up. My dad and the people he worked with would be on the porch of our house every Friday afternoon after work, having a few beers, talking about the week, talking about what they're going to do for the weekend, go to a ball game, go fishing, do what they do. And if I can take a little pride here, it's carried on. I have 3 sons and a daughter. One of my sons just returned from 2 years in the country of Ghana, West Africa, with the Peace Corps, where his job for 2 years was drilling boreholes and bringing water to these remote villages that he worked in. So it's carried on through the family. And Sam did say, and I'm going to say this at the beginning, I usually say it at the end, Sam did point out that I recently retired after many years, active duty in the Army and then the National Guard. And I want to say thank you. I didn't want to retire, but when you turn 64, they say, they kick you out. But I want to say thank you to the water operators because I, besides being mobilized, deployed numerous times outside of the country to various fun spots around the world. I was deployed 3 times during the COVID and the strife that went on in the early 2020s, and everybody was thanking the EMTs and the firefighters and the police and the National Guard. Nobody thanked the water operators, but I'm going to thank you right now because during those periods of time, if the water had shut down, the hospitals would have shut down and people's homes would have been impacted. So you were just as much first responders as those of us, those that were thanked during those periods of time. So let me say that right out front. Because that is the respect and admiration I have for this industry, and I've enjoyed working with you for the past, coming up on 7 years. And when we first started coming to these utility conferences, it was, our pitch to you was this may happen. We have 18 defendants. There are 18 companies that made these PFAS and AFFF chemicals that if they're impacting your water, came from one of them. It may have gone through a bunch more iterations down the road used by various other companies, landfills, air bases, airports, before it got into your water supply, but it was these 18 that are ultimately responsible. And when we first started this, it was, we think we can make this happen for you. We think we can get some settlement monies. We think we can get them on the hook to provide money to you to remediate your water if and when necessary. Well, it's not thinking anymore. Right now, it's happening. We have settled with 6 of the 18 defendants through the leadership of my partner, Paul Napoli, as Sam said, and we'll go into the specific figures in a minute, for $15.4 billion. And we've just concluded phase 1, which means those utilities that had DTECs prior to June of 2023. And that was states where either through their own action or through state mandates, like up in Massachusetts, our Department of Environmental Protection has mandated testing since 2018. We had the testing data. And so half that money, just over $7 billion, went into phase 1, and checks are being paid out. And there are many in Tennessee that, for whatever reasons, for various reasons, tested and qualified for phase 1. And they're getting awards ranging from several $100,000 to one of your utilities in this state. And this is still attorney-client information, is getting close to $20 million because of the level of the impact that they had. What we're talking about right now is phase 2. For those of you who have yet to test or have tested after June of 2023, we need to talk to you. And we're not talking about, I'm sure there'll be some questions. And actually, let me say this too. If there are questions, let's have them as we go along. Interaction makes these things, I'll be the first to admit, this is a dry subject matter, even though we're talking about water. But if you have questions as we go along, raise your hand as we go along, and Sam will come out with the microphone, because that'll be easier. But so we're not really here to talk about whether or not the new administration is going to scrap the 4 parts per trillion that was promulgated by the EPA 2 years ago, or if they're going to extend the testing deadlines. What we're here to tell you is that there's money in the bank. And if you've tested or are going to test between now and the deadline is July of 2026, so you have 11 months. And if you feel you're going to be impacted, we really encourage you to test, because the money's there. No matter what the federal government does from here on out, the money for these settlements is there, and we're still negotiating with 12 other defendants in this case on your behalf, on National Rural Water's behalf, on every state association. Sam and I will be up in Louisville, in Kentucky, in 2 weeks, talking to their association. So this is a little bit about our firm. And really what you need to know about our firm is the face of it. Even though I have many partners and many lawyers, many paralegals, and incredibly experienced environmental attorneys and personnel working on your behalf, the face of it is Sam Wade and myself. And because we take very seriously our representation of rural water in this country, we've taken on the larger metropolitan water supplies around the country. They all have big law departments internally that can do their work for them. We are your law department. We are here to make these things happen for you. So our firm, such as it is, has been around and involved in complex environmental litigation for coming up on 30 years. My partner, Paul Napoli, is on the board of the 9/11 Trust, and he takes that very personally. He's getting a big award in September because the firm on that awful day was located in adjacent to Ground Zero, and Paul took on many of the families of those lost and the first responders and survivors and represented them pro bono, worked with Ken Feinberg in the distribution of the monies to those families. And I say that not in any way to brag, but as an indicia of the fact that our firm is very used to working with these complex pieces of litigation nationally. We're bringing that experience to your benefit, to your utilities' benefit. These are the defendants in the case. These are the ones that we were prepared to go to trial after what Judge Gergel, the case started by individual state and federal cases being brought by individual water utilities around the country in the early 2010s. In 2018, it was decided by the federal judiciary, because so many were popping up, to consolidate all of the cases in the federal district court in Charleston, South Carolina. And that is where the case has sat since 2018, getting ready for trial. 100,000 hours of legal work by our lawyers and other lawyers, again, led by Paul Napoli. 56 million pages of documents gathered, showing that these makers were aware of the deleterious health effects of their products going back to the 1950s. And it was that hard work putting these cases together and negotiating that has resulted in these settlements on your behalf. We're estimating close to 50,000 water systems in the country have been impacted by PFAS to the point where at some point or another, remediation will have to be done. Now, let me make another point about these monies that Sam made it, and there are no strings attached to these monies. If you qualify and start getting payments, this can go into your fund for whatever infrastructure needs you need. Now, you will have to make, or your board will have to make, or your commissioners, and I know there are many here, will have to make the policy decision, where is that used? And if you are in excess of the 4 parts per trillion MCL, then at some point you likely will be required to remediate. But that's a decision, that's a call you make on the ground. And I also want to be very clear, because I've had a few of these conversations since payments have started coming out to phase 1 clients. We are not here to tell you we're going to get you to 100% of what your remediation costs are going to be if you decide to go down the trail to remediate PFAS from your water. We are here to get you as much as we can. And these monies are to be used for as best as you see fit. But this is not a problem that's going to be resolved by this case. And if, as you can imagine, $15.5 billion isn't going to resolve the problem nationally. But before you say, well, that's not much money spread between all the water utilities around the country, you're right. If it was spread among all the water utilities around the country, this is going to be spread among those that qualify, those that apply to get into phase 2 between now and July of next year, which will be nowhere near all the water utilities around the country. But we want it to be your water utilities. We want it to be rural water utilities that get involved in this. Now, when Sam and I first started doing this years ago, we'd have 3, 4, 5, 6 people at our presentations, and nobody knew very much, if anything, about PFAS. What's happened over the last few years, and we'd like to think primarily due to our educational efforts around the country and continually going to all the rural water conferences, is we've had a big hand in educating people to the point where it seems like everybody knows at least a little bit about PFAS and AFFF. And others know a lot. And we like to take a lot of credit for that through our educational purposes, both in person and the constant webinars we are providing on behalf of National Rural Water. So some of these slides I'm going to show you are showing where it's coming from: manufacturing, landfills, airports. We are also showing that wastewater facilities, as you can imagine, at the other end of the spectrum, when they test, are showing incredibly high levels of PFAS. Now, the last couple of years when we've talked to you, we have mentioned, how many wastewater providers are there in the room? Raise your hands. Not a lot, but a few. So we had been thinking that by this time EPA would be promulgating testing for wastewater and biosolids. With the change in administrations, we're not seeing that. We anticipate, though, at some point in the future, that there will be something coming your way as far as discussion of testing for wastewater, but we won't spend a lot of time on that. And when we get that, we will inform you and discuss that. I will say that Lee Zeldin, the head of EPA, although this administration does seem to be rolling back lots and lots of regulations, his district, when he was in Congress in the state of New York, was heavily impacted by PFAS. So he's on top of this. He's kind of a bit of a zealot on this. So I don't know that you're going to see PFAS regs get rolled back as quickly as some other regs that you're seeing. These were, in April of 24, the first national primary drinking water regulations for these 6 PFAS. So as you can see, what we're concerned with here are the 4 parts per trillion that are promulgated and impacting your potential need for testing. Sam, how does UCMR 5 factor into this?
UCMR 5, which you're probably familiar with, requires every system to test for PFAS and P4. Well, let me back up for that. In previous generations of the unregulated contaminant monitoring rule, rural water actually has had systems less than 10,000 population exempted from having that expense. Systems 10,000 and over have always had to pay for testing of that. But because of PFAS, they were not successful in getting systems under 10,000 relieved from that responsibility, but they were successful in getting language put in that says contingent upon available funding. So for systems 3,300 to 10,000, EPA is paying for that test. So the UCMR rule requires essentially all systems 3,300 and above to test for 29 PFAS compounds, and then the state to do a representative sampling of those under 3,300. So that's a UMCR rule right now. Now, they've made statements that the current MCR rule, if you will, or maximum contaminant rule, which establishes the 4 parts per trillion, that compliance with that will be extended to 2031, I believe. Right now, the testing requirements or deadlines, if you will, are still in place. And then I've also stated that they're going to eliminate those other 4 down below, including the health index. That has not taken place. There's a whole process to go through to do that. And there's got to, people can petition to keep them the same and so forth. So who knows if that'll happen or not. But that essentially UCMR 5 is, and for those particularly in phase 2 of this lawsuit is 3,300 to 10,000 have to test for PFAS detections. The state's actually doing that. I'm sure you know that. So.
Thank you, Sam. Got the clicker. These are the settlements of the first 5, actually 6. Carrier is also the successor in interest to Kidde Fenwal, which declared bankruptcy. The DuPont, Tyco, BASF, and Carrier are all, there's some dates there that we'll show in a second. They're all one-time payments. And the payments are based on a formula of your detex multiplied by your flow rate. A little more complicated than that, but in essence, that's what it is. The 3M payment will be paid out over 8 years. You'll get 65% upfront within the first year of qualification, and the 35% spread over 8 years. And we agreed to that because at that level, it's 22% of GM's current equity, of 3M's current equity. We did not want to push them towards bankruptcy because that does no one any good. So we agreed to that. So about $7.5 billion of that is being paid out as we speak, and will be paid out between now and the end of this year, and then the balance over the next 7 years for those that qualified in phase 1. As I pointed out, you take a couple things away from this. Your deadline for phase 2 to talk to us is July of 2026. However, we really encourage you to talk to us beforehand. All our contact information is up here and spread around. Happy to talk to you on our way out today. And there are other funds involved here as well, which if for any of you who have already started any type of remediation, including, we've got numerous communities that have extended their water system to take over well fields of private homeowners because they were being impacted by PFAS in the wells, and we have been able to get them money from special needs funds that are set up as part of these settlements. So we want to hear about that sooner rather than later because there are deadlines on that as well to help you out. There are 12 more defendants that we're negotiating with that could add probably, they're smaller in size, company-wise. It'll probably add not billions to this bottom line figure, but hundreds of millions. And we are hoping to get those resolved by July of next year as well. Again, led by my partners, Paul Napoli and Hunter Shkolnik. How did we get here? I've described it somewhat. Again, probably not of that much of an interest to you, but let you know the work that we do. Again, since 2018, my firm has fronted the costs. And by the way, there is no cost to you for this. This is a contingency fee agreement. And if we get you nothing, we get nothing. We assume all the costs. And we've fronted for the past 8 years all of the costs of this litigation. Months. The 3M settlement, these are the deadlines really. You just need to look to phase 2, systems that tested after June 22nd of 2023. Between June 22nd of 2023 and July of next year. Again, the phase 2 deadline, July 1st of next year, July 12th and July 1st of next year. The TICO and BASF are smaller settlements, but if you threaded that needle, if you started testing after June of 2023 and before May of 2024, you could qualify for further settlements. And we can thread that needle for you if you give us talk to us about your records. And that's the cost to you. The time that some of your personnel would have to spend gathering some of these records for us. With some utilities, it's because of their record-keeping systems, it's very little time. Others, sometimes the record-keeping systems aren't quite as sophisticated as some of the larger ones. That's why we have staff to work with you to help you delve through all of that, to get you to the highest eligibility possible. That is our goal on your behalf. So these are the 5 questions you need to answer to get in the door. What have your lab results been? And by and large, the lab results we're looking for and the flow rates we're looking for 2013 to 2022. Again, if you haven't kept them that long, we will work with whatever you have. A W-9, any remedial action that you've taken or are planning on taking between now and July of next year, that can result in more funds for you. Maximum permitted flow rate or withdrawal per the source. We need records for each of your sources. And with some of our clients, that was many, many sources. And to a large extent, it added to the bottom line for them. So again, depending on where you're at, even if you don't have any detects now, if you're testing but don't have detects, talk to us, because you know better than I that the science of detection is getting more and more specific every year. And if you don't have detects now, you may have detects in a couple of years. And that could possibly qualify you for these other settlements that we're working on. Any questions so far? Okay. I know, everybody's looking to get out of here. It's the weekend. So these are some examples. And if we talk to you, we can actually give you a little more specific examples of some of your colleagues here in Tennessee. Sam and I were getting some significant positive comments at our booth yesterday from some of the, anybody in here that's gotten checks yet? One. Okay, we got about a half a dozen, two. We had about a half a dozen that came through yesterday thanking us for the funds that they've already got in from phase one. And we can give you some more specifics about that if we talk to you about some of your colleagues here in Tennessee. But there's the average of what your average utility is looking at the bottom. And the high. And that high is, that is not, I can't tell you that that's a Tennessee, but you do have one utility here in Tennessee that was not far off from that. And the low dollars, and yes, because we take everybody in the door. Very small utilities we take in. And I'll never forget sitting in my office one time, I got a call from a guy in Medrano Beach, Washington. And he said, I'd like to sign up for your lawsuit. I know my utility here in Medrano Beach is going to get impacted by this. I said, oh, okay, how many households do you service? He said 35. And I said, oh, 3,500, that's a good size. He goes, no, 35. So if you think you're small, you won't be the smallest that we've helped service. We want to talk to you. So here are, okay, yeah, okay, so we do have some. This is from a webinar we did with these 4 states a couple of weeks ago. So there's some averages from here in Tennessee. Again, probably not going to get that particular utility to 100% of PFAS remediation, but it's $3 million, $3.3 million they didn't have yesterday. And this is through the work, and why we want you to work with us is because our attorneys and our paralegals and we have a full-time environmental department can work with you, maybe ask questions that you aren't asking of your records yourself, so we can maximize your benefit from this. So, lessens the burden on your ratepayers. No award for you. It's zero cost to you. That is our website. That is where you can register, but you can call Sam and I to register directly as well. Our contact information is around or will be spread around. We're touching on this just to kind of plant a seed with you. Microplastics, if you're impacted, if you think you're going to be impacted, we represent the city of Baltimore, and microplastics are broken down, the Dasani and Coke and Pepsi bottles, as well as cigarette butts. We filed suit on behalf of the city of Baltimore. They spend $90 million a year to clean this out of their water before it hits the pipes. And we think it's going to start impacting and be seen to be impacting more around the country as the years go on. So again, we like to feel that we're your full service environmental law firm. If you're having other problems besides PFAS, AFFF, talk to us. We're the most experienced in the country, and that is not a brag. That is just the truth, and the proof is in the pudding of these settlements that we have. CERCLA, again, we're touching on this. CERCLA, the Comprehensive Environmental Reclamation and Cleanup Act. Last year or 2 years ago, PFAS was classified as a toxic chemical under CERCLA. What does that mean? That means that we can examine local PRPs, local potentially responsible parties, as another potential revenue stream to bring another piece of litigation, another cost recovery program. If you've got an existing or previous local industry that we can show was the impactful party that caused the PFAS impact upon your water, we are now allowed to pursue them in federal or state court locally. And that's really something that's a policy call locally, and to realize what that means. I know we've had numerous communities that have talked to us and decided against it. I'm not trying to turn down business, but we realize that some of these companies are large local employers. So we realize the local impact and the local policy decisions about things like that. We just want to let you know that that is another arrow in our quiver that that we can bring to the table on your behalf. This is our office. This is our team. Marie, Paul, and Hunter have founded and run the firm for 30 years in complex litigation. I was happy to, I was with the firm. I went to the bench for a while, district court, and then came back to the firm to complete this cost recovery program because I felt that strongly about it, and some of my other colleagues. And these are just a few of the people we have working on this case. But of course, myself and Sam are the faces here. We really feel, we almost feel like a local firm for you that quickly scales up to a national and really international firm on your behalf. So that's us. Please feel free to take a picture. We're happy to send this slide deck out to anyone else as well. It's been a great few days. Did not actually see the bear that walked down the stairs across from the Gillette where I'm staying, but my neighbor across the way did and showed us his. Is that my friend in here who has the bear video? All right. Anyways, it's always a pleasure coming here to Gatlinburg. See people getting antsy here. I do have to offer any questions before we go. Well, I guess I've answered all your questions, or you just want to get rolling, and have a great weekend. Always a pleasure and an honor to be in your company. Please take care. I look forward to seeing you again in the future.
Thank you.